So a couple of days ago, I went to 4eveRetro for the first time, and I picked up a few things. And one of those things, as you can see, is a sort of 60s era Batmobile. I'm saying it's 60s era. It's the 60s era of the TV series, anyway. There must be many thousands of these that exist in Britain at any given point in time, because everyone had one. I think growing up, it's fair to say. Produced by Corgi. Mine is obviously not in completely sort of fit state. Its windshield's very battered. Its rocket launcher is still there, but probably not functioning. I think this little dial here used to fire the missiles out. And I do remember doing that when I was little, but obviously this one isn't going to do that anymore. It's got a hook at the back to hook the Batboat trailer onto, so that's still intact. I believe also that when you used to roll them, there used to be a sort of flame that came out, as in, atomic batteries to power turbines to speed and all that good stuff, but no longer on this particular version. There's also the bat symbol there on the door is intact. So all in all, it's not a sort of bad version of it at all. It also featured this little battering ram at the front, which I now can't get to deploy. There we go. So as you can see, it has got most of its kind of working parts intact. So it's quite a nice example, and I just fancy having an example of it. Really, I've got I think I have a small version of it already. And one detail everyone kind of remembers, I think, is this the sort of the Batman. It's sort of emblazoned on the bottom of it there, which you can see, and that's kind of very much I think it's the sort of early 70s Batman from the comics, because it's quite it's one of the versions of him that I remember most clearly. Strangely, I think because they used to use him in sort of public safety films and sort of posters and stuff like that, along with the Superman of that era. So I do remember him quite clearly. It's good actually. It's even got the little steering wheel is in there. So it's of the two that were available, this was definitely the shiniest one. So that's the one I went for. So that was that. So that's quite nice to have an example of that back. Let's stay on the Corgi theme, because this is also Corgi. I haven't actually seen one of these before, I don't think, but I know of it because I have a Superman version of it. And this is obviously the Spider-Man version of it. It's just a Spider-Man van, which, as is often the way with these things, is rather curious, because in the comics, Spider-Man never had a van. In fact, Spider-Man was lucky if he could buy himself lunch in the comics of the era from which this comes from. So, somewhat ironically, this is just a sort of blatant toy tie-in, which would never actually have existed in the comics. But you can see it's actually labelled sort of completely generically as US van, but it does also say Corgi Juniors on it. So it's definitely, part and parcel of that collection. And indeed, that seems to be a collection that I'm gradually accumulating more examples of, because the stuff that I used to love when I was little, like Buck Rogers Starfighter, Liberator from Blake 7, all that sort of good stuff, is all Corgi, because Corgi had the tie-ins. They bought the rights to the tie-ins. But not all of them, he says, segueing seamlessly into this, which, of course, is I ain't getting on no plane, fool. 18 van. Now, this is a very iconic 80s action series vehicle, generally driven by Mr. B.A. Baracus Esquire, who was not fond of aircraft. And this is not produced by Corgi. This is actually produced by Ertl. It took me a little bit of squinting to figure that one out, but I'm not even sure now if I'm holding that up the right way for you, but it's definitely an Ertl creation, this, which is interesting, because I know that they do a set of Blade Runner cars, and I believe they also did Airwolf. I haven't actually ever laid eyes upon it firsthand myself, but I have seen it on other videos, so I know it exists. So I think that Ertl must have picked up, from where Corgi left off. I wouldn't like to say exactly when Ertl started producing these, but I associate them more with really good die-cast plane models, and indeed with models from the Star Trek series, which they also did, which I have some examples of on this channel. So it's just another example of them doing nice die-cast work. And then I'll go from there to the Knight Industries 2000. Now, again, not something I was looking to pick up, just something that happened to be in the cabinet that I was looking at alongside or very near to the A-Team van. Now, this one, I'm not so sure about who made it. Ironically, the wheelbase is very similar to the A-Team van, but I, with my ancient eyesight, cannot quite make out who made that, and it may be more apparent holding it up, but because I'm filming this with my mobile phone for the first time or second time, I can't actually tell who made that, because I can't use my mobile phone to zoom in on it, ironically. But I have a feeling that this could be another Ertl. Something tells me it might well be, but that was quite a nice little thing to pick up, just as a little example of, again, I mean, it's not exactly minty, but it is what it is. Now, this chap is, again, not something I was thinking that I'd be picking up on this particular occasion, but it's the sort of thing I've had a certain curiosity for, because I had never had one growing up. I'm just wrestling with him slightly to try and get him to reveal himself a little bit more, but I might stop doing that in case I break him. So, this chap, I'm trying to get him in the screen for you. There he is. So this is a Rock Lord. They are an offshoot of the somewhat ill-fated Gobots, and they basically transformed into rocks. That was their thing. They transformed into rocks. So very useful if you're trying to avoid enemies in an episode of Doctor Who and need to hide in a quarry. But apart from that, I didn't really get the significance of turning into rocks. Apparently they did come with weapons, but this chap didn't, and apparently even got vehicles to ride around on, which again I don't really know anything about. I don't even know what this guy's name is, I'm afraid, at the moment. I'm going to have to do some more research on him, so I may well do separate videos on these when I've done a little bit more research, but I just thought I'd show you them as a job lot for the time being. So I don't actually know how to transform him, because I don't know what he looks like when he finishes transforming, which would help. But he's got quite a nice little sort of snarly face thing that he does there. So he's got some molars in there, which is quite nice detailing. And I do know that his arms tuck in, because I've sort of accidentally already tucked his arms in. So as you can see there, he will sort of start disappearing into rock form there. I'm just not quite sure what to do with his legs yet, without breaking him doing it, because I can see how they might go, but I do want to double check before I actually rip a limb off him, because I think that would be a little bit unfair on his first few days at home. So we'll leave him to one side. And then we'll go to another Gobot, and you might be forgiven for thinking that this is not in fact the Gobot, but some sort of micro Optimus Prime, but he isn't. This is Road Ranger. I think I've got that right. And he's MR-18 in the Gobot manner of labelling these particular, I'll call them Transformers. Funny thing about this is, having picked him up, I saw a video on YouTube, which was sort of the extras for the Bumblebee movie, one of the most recent Transformers live action movies. And there was a sort of a cut element from that actually talked about the Gobots and how Bumblebee was like a Gobot because he was a robot who transformed into something to hide from things. And the supporting actor is remonstrated with by the lead lady Hayley Stanfield for likening Bumblebee to a child's toy. I thought was rather like pouring salt into the wound, really, sort of, because the Gobots were clearly the Transformers that weren't. They just didn't quite take off, despite having a cartoon of their own and so on. Now, I tried one video before where I didn't realise I didn't have things on screen properly, because as I say, this is a bit of an experiment with my mobile phone. So I've transformed him, which now means I have to transform him back for you, which could be challenging. However, legs there. The Gobots were never, I think, quite as hard to transform, especially not at this scale, as the Bandai Transformers were. So happily, I think I've probably done that fairly rapidly for you. So there he is. I mean, he's quite. The good thing about the Gobots is, they sort of stand up very, very happily. So for display purposes, you can stick him in a cabinet, no problem at all. It's that'll work fine. It's not a problem at all. So and his trailer moved as well. I didn't really just mention that. But if you can see his hips move, that's because he's actually got sort of articulation to the trailer. But once you've clicked him all the way in, he's then sort of locked in position. Then that's it. So it was quite a nice little pickup. I thought he was he's very shiny. He's in very good condition for his age, which is nigh on 40 years old now. He apparently came through all 3 years of the GoBot toy line, so he actually did pretty well. He was a bit of a survivor. Now this chap was one of my slightly more expensive pickups of the day, and he's one of the more sort of famous GoBots in the sense that he was one of the sort of the core initial 3 of the Guardians, who were the other chap I just showed you. Guardians were the good guy GoBots, and this chap is called Scooter, and it's the least imaginative name possible because guess what he transforms into? That's right, he's a scooter. He's a scooter called Scooter. Seriously, you couldn't write it, although apparently somebody was paid to. So now transforming him he was actually quite tricky. He was trickier to do. Yes, that's right, because his body actually slides up. Let me try and keep this in frame so you can see what I'm doing. So his body extends up and then flips out to form the front of the scooter. These legs are supposed to fold over that way. I can already tell this isn't going to work very well. This is the problem with not... it goes even further, actually. It goes further than I thought. I'm still not convinced I can do it. I'm sure that's not how it was before. I'm going to have to find some instructional videos. I can see it coming. Because I know his arms kind of go... That's supposed to go up. So hang on. So does his head have to go in there, and then that's vaguely promising. And then his arms go up behind there to form the handlebars. Okay. Yeah, that might be about right. I'm still not convinced about how I'm doing the legs though. I think the front element is about right there, and then that's supposed to come up to form the seat. I think. I do remember it saying, I'm sure I read somewhere that there were about 13 steps to his transformation. He transformed into the robot much more readily than he transforms back into the scooter, I think it's fair to say. So it's kind of... I don't want to break him. I really don't want to break him. I'm just gonna kind of leave it there because I'm not convinced that I'm doing it entirely right, and I really don't want to break it, having just picked him up, because that would be bad. There's definitely a bit more toing and froing to be done there, but you can see he's nearly there. But it's nice because the stickers and so on are in very good condition. So I think whoever had him and the one I just showed you obviously looked after them really, really carefully, because they are pretty much unblemished. So that's why I'm not going to force the issue on him. So I shall admit my rustiness and move on. Now this chap, of course, will need no prior introduction. It's Mr. Boba Fett, Esquire. Now, I'm trying very hard not to go down the proverbial rabbit hole when it comes to Star Wars toys and figures. You can get the old Kenner ones loose relatively reasonably. He didn't sort of particularly break the bank, but then he's not got a gun, he's not carded, and so on. So loose figures, if you just want to have them for the sake of old time's sake. This is a Kenner. He does date from the early 80s, and I have very clear memories of his rocket launcher and his sort of his wrist sort of packs there that I think I used to pretend he could shoot missiles and stuff off. But he's not in bad nick. His head's a bit loose, but his limbs and so on are actually pretty decent. So if I try and stand him up, he says, stand up pretty happily. So he's good. I mean, he's in very good condition overall. slightly loose, but apart from that, absolutely fine. So it was a nice find. And as I say, I don't generally get into the figures because there have been so many iterations of them. It was just a question of sort of squinting at him to make sure that he was an 80s version. And it's just his head that's a little bit loose, but it's still a very good sculpt. It really is. So the final thing I picked up, so I didn't go a little bit bonkers, but they did me a deal, which was good of them, was this chap. Now, unfortunately, the closeness on my camera will probably not assist with this, but you can just about make him out, I think, in full screen. He is Captain Nathan Bridger of SeaQuest. Now, not many people will know SeaQuest, possibly, and that's why I grabbed him while I could, because the fact that he's probably been sat there for God knows how many years, so I thought I'd take pity on him if nothing else. But SeaQuest DSV was one of the first shows to use CGI for its external shots. And this was in 94, I think it was, that the first series came out. Ran for 3 years. And it was Roy Schneider of Jaws fame who played Captain Nathan Bridger here, who you can see. And this submarine, which is here, is the SeaQuest, deep submergence vehicle. And it was sort of very, 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 very state-of-the-art. It was set, ironically, the series was set in 2018, which of course is hilarious because we're now 5 years past that at the point of filming. So that made me chuckle when it sort of said the year is 2018. I thought, yep, not anymore. So basically, this was a sort of state-of-the-art submarine, bleeding edge, better than pretty much anything else in the oceans at that point in time. The first season was very, very science fiction. It was very focused on that. That was its aim in life. And I think sort of Schneider kind of came on board. It's also a Spielberg creation as well. And so he came on board with the the thinking that it was going to be quite a sort of highbrow show. Unfortunately, come the second year, it started to degrade somewhat. And Schneider became sort of disenchanted with it. It also moved shooting locations, so they lost a lot of the cast between season 2 and season 3. And in season 3, Michael Ironside came on to captain the SeaQuest, and they jumped it to the year 2032. So at that point, it then became known as SeaQuest 2032 rather than SeaQuest DSV. So the whole thing just got sort of completely upended. But interesting thing, I've done some research on this particular one because I'd glimpsed one of these or similar in a video I'd seen recently, which immediately sort of puzzled me because I'd never seen it before. But it turns out there are only ever the 9 figures produced, rather, of which these are they. And you can see that it would be quite a it would be straightforward to collect. It would be a finite collection to collect. Let's put it that way. Especially if they're priced like this. I mean, this card is a bit damaged at the back. But I wasn't going for minty mintness. I was more for curiosity than anything else. So you've just got the sort of the core main characters of the SeaQuest there, including Darwin the dolphin. Marvelous. And apparently there were some vehicles that might have come out, but after season 1 they just stopped. And the other interesting thing I learned from another video is that these are actually by Playmates. I haven't squinted at this with my glasses on yet to see where it says Playmates, but actually I do kind of recognise that. So I think that might be there. Yeah, that's the Playmates emblem down there. So apparently, interestingly, the Playmates Next Generation, Star Trek Next Generation figures are exactly the same scale as these guys. So you could, if you wished, have an impromptu SeaQuest Star Trek crossover, should you so wish. And ironically, people were sort of viewing it as kind of Star Trek Under the Sea, initially at least. So that would be somewhat appropriate, as it turned, ironically enough. But it didn't last, unfortunately. It had a lot going for it. I quite enjoyed it at the time, and because it was doing CGI stuff. Using Amigas as well, like Babylon 5 did in its early years, I was quite sort of taken with it. So it was just kind of part and parcel for me. I felt morally obligated to watch it. But it just didn't take off in the US, so it came to a halt. But I mean, I do rather like the figure. I haven't looked at it that closely, but the actual head sculpt looks really good. And various accessories and so on that are still there as well. So as I say, it'd be quite an interesting little series just to try and pick up. And I guess because it's not massively collectible as such, people won't be asking lots and lots for them. But I might have a think about that. So I will probably do separate videos on these in due course. But I just wanted to try out this sort of filming setup. And if you could see what I was doing behind the camera, you'd be chuckling, because it's a sort of compromise between using my mobile and not really wanting to afford a much more capable camera to do this sort of thing with. But this may well work for me, I think, when I don't want to use my webcam. So I would be really interested to hear feedback on the video and the sound quality in general. Just to see if you think this would work as a sort of an overall solution, because it could save me quite a lot of money. I've got some more bits coming which should make it easier as well. But I'll tell you a bit more about the setup when I've finalised it. And I will leave you there for now, and may well do this as a premiere, just to see what people think. So catch you again. Cheers for now.